Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in, because today we're exploring a truly fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying intersection. We're looking at what happens when the absolute peak of extreme motorcycle engineering collides with the clinical, unforgiving reality of human vulnerability. It's like, on one side, you've got machines practically bending the laws of physics, right? And on the other, well, our fragile human biology. We're pulling from two very different sources today. One that breaks down the aerospace level tech inside the fastest production bike on Earth, and another that gives us a super sobering forensic look at a crash that happened at just a fraction of those crazy speeds.
Okay, let's kick things off with a massive number, 326. That is the horsepower of the track-only Kawasaki Ninja H2R once you factor in ram air at high speeds. I mean, to put that into perspective, this 998cc inline-4 engine is pushing out more horsepower than a lot of modern sports cars, but it's crammed into a chassis with a wheelbase of less than 60 inches. It's just nuts. And all that power brilliantly translates into another totally unbelievable number, a top speed of 249 miles per hour. And guys, that is not some hypothetical wind tunnel estimate. A professional racer actually took a stock H2R, slapped on some special Pirelli tires and race fuel, and hit 248 miles per hour in just 26 seconds on a closed suspension bridge in Turkey. It is quite literally a rocket on two wheels. But today, looking at the sheer scale of those specs, we have to ask a really crucial question. What actually happens when a machine capable of these literal aerospace speeds meets the absolute limits of human biology and physics? Because, engineers can build a bike that does 249 miles per hour, but they haven't exactly figured out how to upgrade the human skeleton yet. So to figure this out, we're going to follow a pretty stark narrative arc. We'll start with the pinnacle of power and engineering the impossible, then we'll make a pivot, do a forensic reality check, break down the anatomy of a failure, and finish up with the takeaway.
Section 1. The pinnacle of power, the Kawasaki Ninja H2R.
Just look at the contrast between the street-legal Ninja H2 and the completely unhinged H2R. The street version is, a bit hefty at 525 pounds and restricted to 200 horsepower. But the H2R, it sheds weight down to 476 pounds and totally unchains over 300 horsepower. It's a $50,000 track-only monster with zero warranty. And get this, it demands engine service every 15 hours you spend riding above 8,000 RPM.
Section 2. Engineering the impossible. Aerospace on two wheels.
So instead of just bolting on some clunky automotive turbocharger with terrible lag, Kawasaki actually custom-designed a 69mm forged aluminum impeller. It's driven directly by a planetary gear train right off the crankshaft, and it spins at nearly 130,000 RPM. The wild part is, it compresses air with such high adiabatic efficiency, meaning it doesn't create all that power-robbing heat, that they completely ditch the need for a heavy intercooler. Pure engineering magic.
Now, to keep this thing from literally taking flight, it relies heavily on carbon fiber vortex downforce wings. And to handle all those high-frequency road vibrations, it uses a specially tuned steel trellis frame. Toss in a 6-axis IMU and an electronic steering damper, and you've got a masterpiece designed specifically to stop a catastrophic high-speed tank slapper. That violent speed wobble that can just tear the bars right out of a rider's hands in a split second.
Section 3. The pivot. The limits of control.
All right, so we've established the mind-blowing kinetic potential here. But the crucial thing we have to confront right now is what happens when that illusion of invincibility shatters on the asphalt. Because even with all those state-of-the-art electronic aids, the laws of physics are always going to have the final say. To really grasp this, we need to look at what happens to a human body during a crash at a mere fraction of the speeds the H2R can hit.
Section 4. A forensic reality check. The clinical truth.
This brings us to a really tragic reality. This was a 40-year-old man riding a high-powered motorcycle. He was in full technical gear, wearing an approved full-face helmet, and he crashed violently into the back of a stationary van. The van had actually stopped for a previous accident, and witnesses out there reported the bike was absolutely flying right before the impact.
Through a really detailed engineering reconstruction of the accident dynamics, investigators were able to calculate exactly what the rider's body went through upon impact. By looking at the energy soaked up by mechanical deformation and the marks left on the asphalt, they pinpointed the exact speed and force involved the moment that bike hit the van.
And here is where the reality check hits incredibly hard.
Despite the mind-boggling 249-mile-per-hour capabilities of modern bikes like the H2R, this fatal impact happened at just 93 kilometers per hour. That's only about 57 miles per hour. Just let that sink in for a second. We were just geeking out over bikes capable of 4 times that speed, and yet 57 miles per hour was entirely lethal.
Even at that relatively low speed, the vehicle impact energy equated to a massive 98,309 joules. All of that energy had to go somewhere, and it transferred devastating force directly into the rider. But wait a minute, the guy was wearing an approved full-face helmet. We have endless statistical studies proving they are super effective at reducing head injuries. So why exactly did he die?
Section 5. Anatomy of a failure inside the helmet.
The forensic team had to figure out exactly why that top-tier gear failed to save his life. On the outside, the 1450-gram fiberglass helmet looked pretty much intact, mostly just a broken visor docking site. But when they ran it through a CT scan, it revealed this catastrophic, totally invisible failure inside. Right where that left visor attachment broke, the 38mm energy-absorbing liner inside had completely detached.
Let's break down the fatal chain of events here. The rider struck the van on the left side of his helmet, which ruptured that visor docking site. Because that specific structural weak point gave way, the inner polystyrene liner detached and basically completely failed to absorb the blow. Instead, all that raw kinetic energy transferred directly through his facial bones, specifically the cheek and eye socket area, straight into the base of the skull, causing a massive, unsurvivable brain injury. It perfectly demonstrates how one tiny, localized failure in your safety gear can be absolutely lethal.
Section 6. The takeaway. Respecting the machine.
The medical examiners noted something super critical here. To quote them directly, the device studied by the CT scan showed the detachment of the energy-absorbing liner where the left visor attachment had broken. Thus, visor anchor sites may be the areas of least resistance in helmets. That is huge. It points out a massive structural vulnerability in the exact gear we trust to save our lives. Even fully kitted out, hitting the pavement at highway speeds at just the wrong angle can bypass all your protection. So the ultimate takeaway here is really one of profound respect. We can engineer 300 horsepower rockets with carbon fiber wings, but our human biology just hasn't received an upgrade to match. The physics carrying a motorcycle at speed are completely unforgiving. So how will you choose to respect the machine and the physics that govern it the next time you ride? Thanks so much for watching this explainer. Ride safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next one.